up the streaming services ready for this. What's going to be a fascinating broadcast on business resilience with the South of England Ag Society. I always find this bit a bit nerve-wracking because we go live on lots of social media channels, but we never know which ones come live first. And I've got this bank of lights behind me, so I can see when YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Can I call it Twitter? What do I call it now? X something. So it always takes a while to kick in, but that's half the fun of doing these broadcasts. We've just been in the green room with our speakers and our co-chair. Lovely chap called Chris. He's just got off to get a drink of water. I'm just going to let all these social media icons flash up so that we can go fully live. And Facebook's always very slow about going live, but we're now live. Here we go. Right, everyone, let's start properly. Hello, my name is MacGillivray of Beanstalk Global. Pleasure to have you on today's broadcast with the South of England Agriculture Society on this broadcast with the title of Business Resilience 2023, How to Continue Weathering the Storm. We're just talking in the green room about the weather fluctuations that we're seeing here. If you think of everything that we've got going on at the moment, whether it be inflation rates, whether it be shortage of labor, whether it be weather, whether it be external forces like the Ukrainian crisis that we're going through, there's so much that is beating down on us as agriculturalists, as farmers in the southeast and also across the UK. And sometimes the best thing to do is to talk to people or listen to people who are suffering the same issues or who are talking to other farmers or suppliers, because there's a fount of knowledge there to try and elicit some of the answers that you can take away and hopefully assist you to weather the storm. But let's talk about the South of England Agriculture Society before we get our experts in. So we're live on multiple social media channels, on Zoom and on our own podcast with Beanstalk, with the South of England Ag Society, to discuss such an important and ongoing subject. We're going to bring in shortly Chris Appleton from the society. But let's talk about the society. Some of you will know it intrinsically, but some of you may not because of some of the media channels that we're streaming out to. The South of England Agriculture Society is a registered charity dedicated to funding and supporting agricultural education and countryside learning. They work across Berkshire, East Sussex, Hampshire and the Isle of Wight, and Kent, Surrey and West Sussex, so a very large area. And they operate from the South of England Showground, a 150-acre site situated on the outskirts of the village of Ardingly in the heart of the High Weald. That's, as you'll know, is an area of outstanding natural beauty, and it is a gorgeous area. So we're going to talk about it later. If you've never been to the show, you must go to the show because it's one of the best apportioned, wrong word, most attractive shows to visit, not only because of the show, but because of the area as well. The showground hosts many of the main shows and events, and it's home to the South of England Event Centre, which they own and operate on behalf of the society. One of the reasons I entered the amazing world of agriculture, because I don't have an agricultural background, was because of the society. I was brought up in the village of Barkham Cross in East Sussex, and my friends who lived on a local farm in the village used to take me to the highlight of the year, the South of England show. And I did my pre-college years working at Sutton Estates, and we were just talking to one of our experts, James Wallis, from estate manager of Sutton Estates, that when I was doing my pre-college year on the estate, I'm going to have to confess to him later the level of machinery I broke. But that estate was the making of me, and also being involved with the South of England show. Questions. When you've got questions for us, either if you're listening in on Zoom, stick them in through Zoom. If you're on social media, put them on social media, or if easier for you, you can WhatsApp me, and my WhatsApp number is 07900 888 377, 07900 888 377, or if easier, just email info@beanstalk.global. info@beanstalk.global. So let's bring in my co-chair, Chris Appleton. Can you come in? And as Chris is coming in, I just want to say a big shout out to Fram Farmers. Fram Farmers have kindly sponsored the broadcast today. And if you're not aware, I'm sure you know Fram Farmers. Where I'm based up in the eastern counties, they're iconic. There's so many people that use them. Fram Farmers provides the purchasing, crop marketing and admin function for over 1,400 farming businesses across the UK. They act as an extension to your farm office with industry professional purchasing and marketing your core agricultural inputs and outputs on your behalf. And to find more about our sponsors today, Fram Farmers, just dial up www.framfarmers.com framfarmers.co.uk. And Chris, before I get you in properly, we must nominate the website for the South of England Ag Society, which is www.seas.org.uk. Chris, lovely to have you on board today.
Afternoon. Thank you very much for having me.
So Chris, so many people from the society will know of you, but for those that don't, can you just give us a bit of a background on yourself and how you're involved with the society? Over to you, Chris.
Yeah, so we are, for those of you that don't know us, we are a family-run dairy farm here in East Sussex. We've been farming here for 4 generations now, which is very exciting. I'm the 4th generation to look to get involved. And I've been involved with the society trying to help organise the conference and also these webinars for the last few years. And I'm finding it really exciting.
So Chris, here's a loaded question before we bring our experts in. Is farming easy?
I have been asked that by an awful lot of people, and my stock response, which I think I'll probably stick to, is that I don't think that anything in life is easy if you want to do a good job at it. So I think I'd probably put farming into that category as well. But if you want to be successessul, then a bit of hard work and hopefully a bit of expertise, and we'll get somewhere.
Chris, well done, and even more so with you as a dairy business. Just for those people that don't fully understand a dairy, can you just describe your farm? How many head of dairy are you, please?
So we are milking 450 cows. We're an autumn block calving herd, which means that around about now we've just started calving. So between now and Christmas, all hell breaks loose, and then normally come January things calm down a little bit. We're producing milk for Arla, and then that milk is also segregated off, so that is going into the milk bottles that you'll be picking up in Tesco's.
Yeah, well done, and it always sometimes infuriates me with my background, because we have my day job is recruitment within ag and food. There's a stat that always comes out, Chris, from the Farmers Weekly, from the NFU, that 6 out of 10 kids don't know where fresh produce or milk or agricultural produce comes from, and the amount of time and effort that you put in to deliver that milk, so little Johnny or little Tracy can have milk on the cereals or whatever it would be. You and I have been in numerous conversations about how we can better raise the profile of dairy farmers and other farmers, but perhaps that's a conversation for another time. But I just wanted to extol the virtues of you, because you're very busy in what you do, but to also put in your input into the South of England Ag Society to better that society, and by sort of osmosis, that's going to better the whole of the farming sector in your area, which is going to be a benefit to everyone. So presumably you're really positive about being involved with the South of England Ag Society, are you, Chris?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also sort of following on from what you were saying, I think the South of England they do and continue to put an awful lot of hard work into their into the education side of things. And yeah, I think that it's perhaps even slightly undersold, but there is an awful lot goes on there. There's in terms of outreach and education, which I think really helps us in the farming community.
Yeah, and we've got to give a big thumbs up, a big pat on the back to the team. There's always that unspoken team, that do so much behind the scenes. Yeah. Sometimes don't get the celebration, the thanks. But if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be doing this today. And if it wasn't for them, the shows. And also, we're going to mention a little bit later your major conference coming up, your November farming conference on the 1st of November. If it wasn't for them, with your assistance, the Show Society wouldn't be what the Show Society is today.
Oh no, I wholeheartedly agree. And yeah, there is certainly a very dedicated team behind these broadcasts, and behind the South of England as well, that are working tirelessly to hopefully bring all of this valuable content. And also, Max, I think no one's said thank you to you as well for your hard work in putting this all together and what will hopefully be a smooth and professional broadcast.
Chris, thank you very much. I love it. It's what I do. If I wasn't talking to all of you, I'd be talking to my dogs, and they're bored of me talking to them. So let's talk to all of you. What we need now, Chris, is some experts. So can our experts come in? And just to reiterate again, especially for those people listening on the podcast, and team, I don't know if you found the same thing, that when I've been to major conferences or gone training, everyone seems to have the same problem, but they always feel so isolated. But it's at these conferences, whether it be over a cup of tea or at the bar, you suddenly find out that everyone's got the same problems. And actually someone might be 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years in advance of you and knows what the solution is. So in effect, that's what Chris and I are trying to create by having our experts in today to talk about business resilience, to be stronger for the future, to weather this storm, so that we can all be better, that we can all be better farmers or suppliers or whatever it may be. So now our experts have come in. I've already preordained Sarah. Sarah knows I'm going to pick on her first. Sarah, can you give us a little bit of background as to who you are, please, and the business that you're involved in, the business that you run? Sarah, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Max. So I'm based down in the southwest in Devon, and my interest in farming stemmed from the family farm, much like Chris's autumn calving, so calves coming out of our ears at the moment. But more recently, I went to agricultural college and got a degree in agriculture, and I've probably been doing farm advice, facilitation and compliance work now for about 8 or 9 years. So Creedy Associates is where I'm based in Devon, and we do a lot of specialist farm advice with a reasonable bias to livestock, because in the southwest we've got a lot of cows about.
And Sarah, just give us your website, please, so we can find out. Chris, I hope this is okay. I want all of these lovely experts to benefit. Sarah, how can people find you? What's your website address, please? CreedyAssociates.com or at Creedy Associate on Twitter. Okay, and you know
X,
how
as you said.
yes, and we know how competitive the agricultural world is. Which agricultural institution did you go to, please?
Oh, I'm a Harper Adams graduate, so
okay, let's
company
see
today.
Well done. Let's see how this goes. Justin, over to you. Who are you and who are you representing? Why do I need to say this, Justin? Because you have one-page spreads in the Farmers Weekly. You're like the GQ magazine of farming.
Yeah, it would be if I was if it was my image on there. I think, Max. But thank you, and afternoon, everybody. Yeah, my family are farming in the Cookmere Valley, actually not a million miles away from Chris. And some 20 years ago, with many generations of Ellis's within the business, and probably not quite enough work to do, I decided to head to New Zealand and did some dairying out there for 12 months before I became a banker. And so for the last 20 years, I've been effectively lending money to the farming community. 10 years of that in New Zealand, and about 12 years back here in the UK, now supporting sort of large estates and farm businesses across Kent, Sussex, Essex, and Suffolk. So yeah, passion, and everything that I do is all about agriculture and supporting those businesses.
And Justin, one thing, thank you. One thing I've learned about the agricultural banking community is that they love to have conversations with farmers. What they do, and steer me on this one, Justin. If you as a farmer are looking at even blue sky thinking, looking at a bigger project or somehow developing your farm, all of the agricultural banking community are very keen to have that conversation with you, because Justin will have that exposure experience and in the respect of knowing what has worked and what may not work and what will work, and being able to steer your project thinking. Justin, would that be correct?
100%. I think, and I think, to be fair to agriculture across not just bankers, but there's a whole load of consultants and rural professionals who are experienced at sitting at the kitchen table with you to have those conversations and discuss those plans. And certainly, in my experience, the earlier you engage any of those people, you're going to get the best outcomes and the best advice.
Yeah, I always end up saying this on a broadcast, that the better leaders I come across all industry areas, and I know this is so difficult in farming, but the better leaders are those that spend 20 to 25% of their working week, their working month, just thinking. So if you're thinking of, I'm going to go an AD plant, or tenanting another farm, or looking at another dairy, I think what Justin said is spot on. You'll have a trusted advisor, and to start to bounce that idea of that advisor, and then to bring Justin in. Justin, it's funny, isn't it? Pick a number, 25 years ago, everyone was frightened of bank managers, but now they could be your best friend along with that trusted advisor to help take your business through to that next stage. Absolutely,
and that's our job. And certainly I would say that I can add most value to any of my clients or potential clients the earlier that I'm engaged in the process and they're thinking about what they're looking to do.
Excellent. So if you're thinking of where you need to be, go have a word with Justin. Ben, over to you. Who are you and who are you representing, please?
Well, I'm Ben Taylor. I look after the Iford estate, which is just outside Lewis. We're about 1,200 hectares or thereabouts, 800 of arable, and then a herd of suckler cows on the rest of it and some sheep. But the core focus for me at the moment is developing a biodiversity net gain scheme, which I've been working on for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, come on, you've been a bit modest. Come on, tell us. We want to know more. Tell us the gold. Come on.
Well, I've for the last 3 years, I've been working with Natural England and DEFRA to develop their national credit pilot scheme. And then more recently, I've been branching out into private biodiversity markets and trying to deliver the scheme, really. Okay,
and go back to the conversation we just had with Justin. Is this you, X number of years ago, blue sky thinking about how you can future-proof your unit, your farming business? Are you looking to future-proof?
Yeah, no, it was a lot of blue sky thinking a few years ago. Yeah,
excellent. Okay, and how confident are you about succeeding in this major project? Oh, did I just ask that? Go on.
Well, I'm hopeful. Reasonably confident. Yeah, all the movements in the right direction now.
Okay, cool. You're steering that one. So if it's okay, Ben, can we follow you, collectively follow you, just in the weeks and the months and the years to come? Because we've got a great example of yourself who look to, I'm not sure I like the word anymore, but diversified. You're looking to, let's go for future-proof. You're looking to future-proof your business by that blue sky thinking. So is that okay, Ben, if we follow you?
By all means, yeah.
Excellent. James. So James, I was leaving James to last because this is my confessional, because I used to, a gazillion years ago, before James became estate manager at Sutton Hall, I did my pre-college year, as we were saying in the green room. I must have broke every piece of machinery I touched. So just like the library ticket that you take back after 35 years and they give you a bill for £1,000. We were saying in the green room that James just said, just write us a check for whatever you think it's worth, Max. But that aside, tell us about your beautiful estate, please, James, and also yourself.
Yeah, afternoon. So I'm James Wallis. I actually contract farm the Sutton Hall estate for the Slater family. It's 1,000 hectares. We run 850 dairy cows. Like Chris, we're autumn block calving, so we're about to get very busy. We have more recently diversified into Christmas trees. So we're planting 120 acres of Christmas trees. We're 80 acres in so far, but that's been our big project over the last 5 years, as well as reopening a dairy 5 years ago as well, as a sort of result of Brexit and trying to future-proof the business.
Thank you, James. And your background, please. How did you get involved in agriculture?
Yeah, so I grew up on a small family farm over near Oxford in Surrey. Always loved farming. Went off to Harper Adams, like Sarah, but a long time before her. Finished in '96. Did a couple of years for a farm management company up in Northumberland, and then came down to Sutton Hall in '98 as a trainee farm manager. And then sort of worked here for 12 years, and then eventually sort of took on the contract farming with the owners, which is a big step and a very exciting one. And we're sort of growing the business from there on, really.
Yeah, well done. It's a beautiful, beautiful area. So we've got everyone introduced. Chris, do you want to fire off with this first question? And Chris, just before I let you go, remember, if you're dialed into Zoom, you can ask questions via Zoom or via social media, or email me at info@beanstalk.global, info@beanstalk.global if you've got any questions. Chris, do you want to fire over that first question? Let's see where it takes us, please.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, everyone, for those wonderful introductions, and thank you very much, Max. But yeah, I think it's probably about time we get stuck into the nitty-gritty of on-farm resilience and try and figure out how we're all going to weather this storm. So a question for all of you first. What do you feel currently are the biggest challenges and opportunities to running a farm business in 2023? I think we've already picked on Sarah enough times, so perhaps we'll go to Ben first, if that's all right.
Yeah, well done. I was going to nominate Ben. Go, Ben.
I've been thinking about this over the last few days, and I think actually the biggest challenges are all macro challenges, and they're revolving around things like climate change, which I'm sure is affecting everybody's business, and it's certainly affecting ours. The rainfall patterns, the patterns of weather are changing. They're changing fast. I think combined with that, you've got this cost inflation, which again we're all experiencing. But tied with that, we've got very stagnant output prices at the moment, and there's the more sort of Brexity type regulatory factors, the availability of inputs of all types, I think, fertilizers, chemicals, machinery, all those things, and also the efficacy of chemicals reducing all the time, no new actives coming along. So they're all just big macro factors. It's hard work.
Just to interject, I was at a thing earlier this week, and we're just talking about it in the green room. And there's a prediction that for every 1 degree tick up we have of temperature in the UK is going to give a 20% diminishing level of water availability for UK agriculture. I'm still trying to work out the mass of that, but it's quite a seismic thing. And up in where we are in East Anglia, there's all this talk about, well, we can't grow potatoes if we haven't got the water. What do we grow? Soya. Sorry, Chris, I'm just going to pick on James. James, are you seeing the same as Ben on that farming perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the cost of finance is expensive and going up, so it makes any big decisions about growth quite difficult for us. The next few years about consolidation and really, trying to sort of take the volatility of massive price fluctuations out of the equation as much as possible by controlling our costs. I think one of the big problems we're facing really is with labour. Not so much in the dairy, but certainly with Christmas trees, we need a lot of seasonal labour. Finding people who are willing to work long days on Christmas trees, very difficult. The best plans that we make, we do a lot of budgeting, do a lot of forecasting, but the weather is always going to be the massive unknown factor for us. And it's we certainly see no shortage of rainfall in our part of the world, but it's the sort of level of, the extremes now, isn't it, of weather that are causing us the big problems.
Yeah.
We're having to change our cropping slightly to deal with that. We're growing more grass, more acres of maize. We've reduced our reliance on wheat as a sort of an income for the estates, because it's becoming more and more difficult to grow it sensibly.
Chris, it feels a bit like my analogy is a bit like with mortgage rates doing this. It feels like you need to lock in, so at least you know what your costs are going to be. It'd be interesting to ask Sarah and Justin on their advice as to what do farmers do, because they've got to protect. They're going to limit those costings and try and raise their income. Sarah, you must get this question asked all the time. What's your answer? What's your retort? How do we help farmers? Give them that advice. What would you suggest, please?
It's a very complicated question, and it differs a lot from business to business. But understanding your cost of production is crucial. And realistically, going forwards, farmers are likely to want to become more specialised to get that cost control element as such, and have a real key into all of those figures. And if they're looking at specialising, it might be that they're looking at value adding if they've got the skill sets to do that, but it might be that they're looking at other income streams. And I think that's another big challenge for farms going forward, because there's a lot of changes coming with all of the different schemes and payments. Basic payments is obviously going, but there's been a lack of clarity going forwards of what that's going to be replaced by. So in terms of budgeting, it has been a challenge for people to see where that additional income could come from.
So, Chris, again, I think we might have I'm going to hand over to you, Chris. I'll shut up a minute. There might be a key point here about budgeting, because there is a view within the UK agriculture per se that farmers aren't good at budgeting, crunching that data. Chris, what do you think?
I think it's very difficult. I think we in farming are very good at, how do you describe it? I'd say some of us are very good at farming, perhaps. The business side of things is where we are very good at falling down. And I think, as you say, that's why it's so important to ask, first of all, to sit on events like this and to listen to what other people are doing, and also to pull in the right expertise so that ultimately we've got the right people running different sides of our business. It sounds as though, well, from what we've heard so far, that interest rates and finance, labour and prices and cost of reduction are some sort of key areas that we're all thinking about, and none of that comes as a particular surprise. I suppose following on from that, Justin, have you got any more comments on that question?
Yeah, no, I do, because for how many years have I been told that oh, crikey, we're going to do a budget for the banker? Well, I'd like to think that most businesses now think about, well, we do a budget because a budget allows us and informs our decisions, and informs those short, medium, and long-term decisions as well. And while I recognise that they're probably only as good as the day they're actually produced, but they do create and provide a really strong framework for decision making for everybody. And yes, the banker is certainly part of that team relying on those budgets, but for me they're absolutely critical, and a critical part of business management. And I would then argue that then monitoring against that budget is just as important. And Max, I know you spoke earlier just about we're looking to you may have a business looking at some plans for the future, being able to demonstrate to those counterparties that you might have, and they may be a banker, there might be somebody, a family member who's going to lend some money, having all of those, that evidence in terms of what's gone on in the past, how you framed your decision making, all of that is really, really important as businesses look probably over the next few years to diversify.
No. Well, so Chris, can I just interject? Because I just had a question in for James. James, with your Christmas trees, what would happen if you paid more money for that labour? Do you think that would just create the solution?
Yeah, when we do pay very well. I think it's just finding people who are reliable. It's younger people aren't particularly interested in coming and working outdoors in the trees. A lot of it is unskilled, and a lot of it is frankly quite boring. And we're competing against other businesses who can pay a lot more money than we can, because Christmas trees, like dairy farming and all farming, it's quite a fine margin, and there is a ceiling as to what you can pay. We are spending more money on mechanisation. I think that's the thing. Well
done, because this contact just said, what about automation? But so we luckily we got a specialist Christmas tree tractor with some grant money. It's an expensive bit of kit. It's very specialised, but it essentially does the work of 4 people. But there are lots of elements of Christmas tree growing that just involve manual labour. So actually we're outsourcing some of that now to specialists from Herefordshire who are able to help with that, and then we put in farm staff if we can to help with all that work. But yeah, it's a big problem, and across the board, just not just in the Christmas trees, but in the dairy farm as well. We've seen a lot of wage inflation over the last 12 months just to keep people, and we've got good people, and we need to pay them well to keep them, which is fine when the milk price is 50p a litre, but much more difficult to justify when it's 35. Yeah. Go on, Chris.
Well, I was going to say, and following on from that, Jim, is there anything else that you guys are doing? I think in my experience, yes, obviously remuneration is very important when it comes to keeping hold of good people, but actually, is there anything else that you guys are doing? And I suppose probably I should spread this question out to everyone else as well. Anything else that you're trying to do to also hold on to the right people and hopefully keep them content? I know that's a bit of $1 million question.
Yeah, I mean, we provide the best quality housing that we can provide. That's a big draw for us. It's a really beautiful area, and we recognise the fact that actually in the dairy team, especially, that working a 5-day week is quite a big draw. There's still people out there who expect more of their pound of flesh than we do. My business really revolves around good people, and I have got some exceptionally good people. And you need to recognise that actually the whole business is very, very important to me and to the Slaters, but to them it is a work. It is just a job. But luckily, I have people who really buy into the whole thing. So it's money, it's time off, it's good housing, and the freedom to run their own units within certain parameters. on their own without me micromanaging them. I think that's quite important as well.
Yeah.
Just Chris, just to interject with my recruitment understanding, there's a major farming company who won't name for obvious reasons, but about 6 months ago, they increased all the farm manager wages by upwards of £10,000 to £15,000, just as a sweetener, as a cost of living issue, just to hold them. And we've got other clients who are offering, and you've got to get your head around this, 36 days holiday a year, including bank on it with the bank holidays in addition, just to add a USP to their business to try and make them more attractive. So it's getting more and more competitive. So if you're thinking about what you need to do about labour, I think we can learn a lot from the likes of James. Chris, back to you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Max. Well, and I suppose probably on the subject of labour, is there anything that perhaps Ben, Justin, or Sarah have got to add to that? Because I think it's a really important subject, and it's something that is forever going to come up when we're having these conversations.
Go, Ben.
You're right. Labour is the key to any farming business. I guess it's the key to any business at all. But we're very lucky that we don't need seasonal labour. I've got a small but tight knit team of really dedicated staff, and it's all about pay and conditions and making sure you look after them really and keep them. Yeah, absolutely. And Sarah, of course, you get out and about and see a great many different farms and a great many different ways of doing things. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that.
Yeah, just a brief comment really, that there's a lot of things that people are looking for out of a job that farming can offer, but not necessarily what we would think as a real plus of it. I've seen job adverts where it's a picture of the tractor cab saying, would you like this to be your office? And it's getting people out and about in the countryside. It's giving people something a bit more active to do, which especially after COVID, there is more of a desire for that, and offering flexible working patterns. There was a brilliant job advert that I saw, which started off saying, do you like surfing? And it was a whole load of pictures about this farm, which was right on the coast in Cornwall. Brilliant. And technically it wasn't that accessible and various other things, but by advertising it from that side, it really did show it as a niche and what was special to that farm.
Chris, just on a recruitment perspective, again, there's my best example to counter Sarah's in a positive manner. About 5 years ago, there was a farmer up in Lincolnshire. He couldn't get a main tractor driver, and it was a big unit. It was a class quad track thing or case with a big drill on the back. So it was about £250,000 worth of kit, full of IT. Couldn't find anyone. He went down the pub and he was moaning to some of his mates who don't know anything about agriculture. And they said, "Well, what's involved?" And they said, "Well, it sounds like it's a computer engineer's role." And so this farmer went for it and just advertised for a computer engineer, and he had a dozen applications within 48 hours. And going back to Sarah's example of the picture of the tractor, then alluded to these individuals. This is it. This is your office. And he could have given the job to 4 people because they all wanted to get out of the office, but they wanted to be kept up with tech, and they wanted to do an outdoor type of role. And that chap is still there as head of farms now, running having never been involved. And just on your website, I'm sure James has got this. It always frustrates me sometimes with farming companies. If you're looking for staff, make sure the top right-hand corner of your website, there's a big button saying, "Come work with us." And you click on that, and that goes to a page that your web designer or whoever does it for you will have set up. And it's a nice page about how great we are and what we do, lots of imagery. And don't ever put no vacancies available. You will always be looking for good people. So put on there, if you're interested in working for us, even if we haven't got any roles, we'd love to see your details. So again, you've got to have that open funnel to attract people in. And if you don't have a website in this day and age, it's a conversation for another time. Chris, back to you.
Thank you very much. And yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think the policy of not letting good people go past your door is probably certainly one of many ways of hopefully maintaining a healthy staff, a healthy team. Sorry, Justin, we haven't really heard from you, but I don't know if you've got anything to add to that from a bank.
The only thing I would add, Chris, probably is that it's probably no coincidence that you and Jim and are good at keeping your staff, and probably because I know you well enough that you will communicate really well with those people as well. So with all the conditions in the world, if you can't communicate and talk to those people as human beings, and treat them with respect and communicate really well with them and empower them and then trust them to deliver, they genuinely perform for you. And so when I see people have staff issues, often that's the issue rather than necessarily some of those other conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you very much. Very kind. So probably moving on to our next question. May I ask, how have all of you adapted your businesses to meet the needs of this rapidly changing environment that we are currently operating in? I probably would look to go to Jim on that one first, if that's all right. You sound like you've got an awful lot of different bits and pieces going on over there.
Wait, sorry, Chris, can you just repeat the question? My battery was just dying on my thing and I was asking for a lead.
Not a problem. So how have you adapted your business to meet the needs of the rapidly changing environment that we are currently operating in?
Well, so essentially, as an estate, we basically sit down every 5 years and do a 5-year strategy. 5 years ago was 2018. It was sort of post-Brexit. We decided at that stage that growth and borrowing money was quite cheap. We decided that actually we needed to diversify, still within farming, and we need to expand to make us more efficient and to concentrate on the things that we thought we were good at. And we've not been afraid of really learning some new skills. I mean, Christmas trees, essentially are farming, but it's a vastly different style of farming to what I'm used to. And I think basically I've probably adapted the way that I work as well. I'm more hands off. I mean, I love farming. I love getting my hands dirty and being out there, but we've become much more numbers driven and focused on budgets and having monthly meetings to make sure we're heading in the right direction. Yeah. I suppose that's the sort of key change. And then I guess this spring, we did another 5-year strategy, and we've really decided that consolidation is the key for us now. That cost control, making sure that we do what we do really well is key to our survival, really.
Yeah, and it's really interesting to hear that, because I've sort of made a few notes here of what we can all be doing to, I suppose, try and to survive. And whether it is, forgive the pun, being the best in our field, or whether it is looking to diversify, whether we should be investing, whether we should be looking to hold off and sort of weather the higher interest rate storm. I appreciate that high interest rates is a bit of a funny one, because certainly before my time, people experienced far worse than this, so I'm told. But certainly interesting times for us all. Ben, I'd be really interested to hear a bit more about what you guys are doing in your biodiversity work as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I made a few notes as well, and it's about diversification for us. We've spent 20 years diversifying as rapidly as we can out of farming. So we've got a lot of offices, we've got a lot of workshops, we've got a holiday lodge, park, we've got fishing lakes, airstrip, a whole load of different enterprises, and just trying to spread, I think, the risk between all of them. So we're not solely reliant on any of them, including the farming. But then within the farming itself, it is about cost control and about risk control and risk management.
Yeah.
Really watching the inputs, but not taking your eye off the output as well, because it's a false economy, isn't it, to reduce your inputs at the expense of the output. So it's just about that. It's about knowing where you are. The whole budgeting point about knowing what your budget is, which direction you're headed, which it can inform all of those decisions.
And how have you found managing that over the last few years? Because of course, the caveat to I suppose diversifying is, and certainly a conversation we've had many times, is to try not to take our eye off the ball with the bread and butter of our business, which is ultimately milk production. How have you found dividing your time between those two different bits, and how have you managed that? Yeah,
well, I suppose I'm spending a lot more time in the office. I seldom make it out of the office and get my hands dirty anymore. So, but it's about putting good people in to look after each of those little enterprises, and as we said already, empowering them to do what they need to do. and make the decisions they need to make, and just keeping an overview over it all.
Yeah. And Sarah, we haven't heard from you. I wonder if you've got any more to add to it.
Yeah, I was going to come at it from a slightly different angle, if you don't mind, Chris. And I was going to say that to start with, for farmers to know how they're going to adapt their business, they need to know their personal goals. We work with a lot of family farms that are fairly close-knit teams. And a bit like you alluded to earlier, some people just want to do farming, and that's absolutely fine. But if that's how you're motivated and that's sort of your skill set supports that, realistically, diversification outside of your core isn't really for you. You might be able to do perhaps a value add project. There's quite a few vending machines going up in this sort of area or something like that. So you're not massively changing the skill set required to run your farm. The other way of doing that is to look at income which supports your current farming practices, or farming practices which aren't changing massively. So things like the sustainable farming incentive coming down the line, but also there's this increasing area which, as we've already heard from Ben, of biodiversity credits. There's a lot of phosphate credits, and things like water companies are starting to put payments to reduce inputs going to fields. And then at some point, we'll dabble into carbon markets when that's a bit more established and set up for sure.
No, that's really interesting. And Justin, of course, you get out and about and see an awful lot of businesses as well. Have you got any more to add to that?
I think, to be fair, Sarah summed it up. I might call out the same point. You know, what does the family want to be, and understanding what they want to be and what success looks like for them will help inform some of those diversification opportunities, and let that be the driver of strategy, rather than perhaps government policy be the driver of strategy. Government policy might impact tactics, but not strategy. And it's interesting that James is talking about, you know, a very clear 5-year plan for that business. I can imagine that helps and informs decision making and deciding which projects to proceed with and which not to.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think if we allow government policy to drive us, I suppose, too much, that is able to ebb and flow and change on potentially a 5-year or even less timescale, isn't it? When, you know, with changes of government and whatnot. And actually, what we're doing on the ground is probably far more important when it comes to the long-term survival of our businesses.
So, Chris, can I just ask the question of Justin? Justin, it's a bit of an emotive question, but it's about 5-6 years ago, just before, remember the B word Brexit, I had a head of a large agricultural consultancy practice in my office, and he was rubbing his hands because he was very much looking forward to Brexit. And the statement he stated still shocks me to the day. He said that he couldn't wait forward till Brexit because the 40% of uneconomic farmers in the UK would go by the way, and the 60% of economic farmers who were on the money, who knew how to budget, would swallow up those uneconomic farmers, and that would be a benefit to him because he represented all those 60. So forget his odd comments, but do you think that there's still a lack of sophistication with UK farming? And I know we sort of covered this before, but I think we need to drive this home. Is there a lack of financial planning, budgeting, statistical awareness, strategic planning on a financial perspective on UK farming? Justin, do you think that's still a big issue?
I think it's a potential issue, Max. Sarah will probably have a view on this too. I tend to deal with people that borrow reasonable chunks of money, and so the people that I tend to spend most of my time with tend to be perhaps more sophisticated. What I hear when you talk to various industry professionals is that there's a population, say that, you know, whether you want to say the top 25%, whatever the top 25% is, I guess that's what you're talking about. Some of those more sophisticated businesses will, or perhaps, they're going to be more likely to be more financially successful, quite possibly. There's then you then hear people say, well, the least productive, you might say 25%, well, they'll just work harder, so they spend less money. I'm not sure that's a great outcome. And then perhaps it's that the middle group of farmers who I think you get feedback that they are the ones that probably I would believe would benefit from perhaps a bit more forward planning and driving, or focusing on some of the things that they can control to develop their businesses, rather than waiting perhaps for government policy to drive those decisions.
Yeah, so Chris, it comes back to the start of the conversation. They need to speak to the likes of the Sarahs and the Justins of the world to get that, I don't know the right word, education. Chris, back to you.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think pulling in the right levels of expertise, the right expertise and the right people to manage those different areas is really important, isn't it? So I think who have we not heard from here yet? Or in fact, probably on to our next question. Sorry about this. Bit of distraction in the office. So obviously we've heard about a few different changes to your various businesses over the last few years. Through these changes, can I ask, what have you all learned or that you didn't previously know about the business and the people who work in it, and indeed yourself? Probably I'd look to go back to Ben first, if that's all right.
Thank you, Chris. What have I learned about the business? Well, I think that it's more adaptable than I thought. It's actually, some of the changes we've been making are big strategic decisions, and you sort of worry that either the staff won't be on board or the business won't work. But it's actually, it's more adaptable, and the timescales that you can do it in are reasonably quick. So that's surprised me. But there's always a bit of a nervousness about change, I think.
Yeah,
you just got to kind of keep pushing forwards, I think, and doing what you think is right. Well,
and I think the sort of being slightly apprehensive about change is human nature, isn't it? And it's very easy to sit here and say, oh well, we'll try and do that tomorrow, but actually making a start is one of the hardest things, isn't it?
Yeah.
And Jim, I don't know if you've got any more to add to that.
No, exactly the same as Ben. I mean, having good staff just makes the whole process so much easier. And that farmers are very adaptable. 1 minute we're sort of a vet, the next minute we're a plumber, the next minute we're looking at spreadsheets, and we are actually, as an industry, pretty good at what we do. I think the thing that I've learned is that it's really important to take a step back occasionally to look at the bigger picture, because it's so easy to just keep sort of pushing on through and trying to work harder and harder to get through a problem. And of course, I suppose, quite lucky in that we're of a scale where I can do that. I have the ability to step back and do that. It's much harder, I think, for family farmers to do that, because time is a precious commodity for them. But certainly for me, and also, I contract farm someone who was a banker and a financier, so I've really had to up my game on all these sort of elements, because my natural tendency is just to sort of work harder. But it's been really interesting and very valuable to the business to just take a step back.
Yeah, and I think certainly we have looked to take a very similar approach, and actually probably guided by yourself and certainly a number of other farms in the area. We've been through a process of trying to simplify the business and simplify what we're doing. Free up more time, free up more man hours, which is now allowing us to go into a more an investment phase, hopefully with a slightly clearer view of what we want to look like when we come out of the other side. Sorry. Sarah, have you any more to add to that?
Well, I was going to take it on a slightly different spin, if that's okay, but I was going to say that a lot of farmers, and it was our initial conversation that we had when we became online, we worry about a lot of things which realistically we don't have a huge amount of control over, or not a huge amount of influence. Inflation, input prices, things like that. It's not something we can really control, but there's a lot of other stuff which we wouldn't necessarily initially perceive as essential to running the business, which we can control but has a massive impact. There was a guy at Groundswell called Gary Markham who produced some profitability figures comparing regenerative agriculture, and the fascinating piece, which ties a little bit into what Justin was saying earlier, being asked of Gary, was that what's the difference between the top 25% and the bottom 25%? And you can pick into all of the different numbers, but he said on the whole the bottom 25% have a communication issue within the team, whether that's the family or the business. And that's something they can really control. And once they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, it will be so much easier to head for those goals and aims together.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I suppose you should probably slightly adapt the question, Justin, but I should probably ask, what changes have you seen happen on other farms, and what do you think has been the biggest take-home lesson for you, but also that you've seen other people learn about their businesses?
What I notice, I suppose, is that some businesses have a plan and then document it, and are very clear around what success looks like in terms of what they're trying to achieve. And we see lots of people, lots of businesses, whether it's farmers or wherever they may be, have a plan and go and deliver it, but are never quite sure what they're trying to achieve or measure success. And we're not very good as an industry of actually patting ourselves on the back and saying, crikey, I've done a really good job of that, because we never really set out what we wanted to achieve. So I would say that whenever people are looking at diversifying or any of their plans, make sure they're properly documented. Go back to what the original plan was and say, well, hang on, when it was, do we make the correct set of assumptions to start with? How are we tracking towards it? But then when you actually do achieve what you set out to, celebrate it with the team. As more often than not, if you're clear about what you're trying to achieve, then you've probably passed that on to the team around you, that's what we're trying to achieve, and celebrate together. And funnily enough, you've got everybody on board to drive more success.
Brilliant. Chris, can I do my normal thing? Just interject. What Sarah said about Gary is, and Gary sees us all the time. I can't remember the stats, so I won't try and guess at it. But there's a Justin, even though there's a significant proportion of the farming community that don't even have wills. And so, God forbid, if you fall over in the pub and you got nothing set up. So even that level of, but then, as we all know, it's so difficult. UK agriculture, when it's a farming business, it's your life and soul. It's quite difficult to have those conversations. But Chris, we seem to be coming to the same thing. It's all about communication, isn't it? And I just want to build in this question at Mark Thomas from the brilliant Farming Community Network, and I love the strapline here for you. Messaged me this morning. You basically covered the main element of his question, but I just got to cross the line here. How are you looking after yourselves? How are you looking after yourselves? How are you personally continuing to weather the storm? And sorry if it's a bit of a personal question, but that's why we sort of got you on. James, you go first. How are you looking after yourself, please?
Oh, it's tricky. Stepping back helps, I think. I've got a young family, so I took some time away last week at the start of harvest, which was a pretty bold move, but it's great to sort of just stop thinking about farming for a while. I also have a really good network of farming friends around here, and it's problem shared is a problem halved, or whatever the expression is so true. Just being able to bounce ideas and how you're feeling about stuff off with your neighbours is great, and that's something that I've really consciously tried to see more of in the last 3 or 4 years. Because it can be a very insular industry, can't it? You're on your own a lot. When you sort of employ quite a few people, it's very difficult to talk about any issues that you might have in regards to the bigger stuff with people that work for you. So it's important to have friends, and obviously I'm very lucky that I have a very understanding wife and great kids, and that helps enormously as a buffer.
James, thank you. Ben, how do you look after yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's much the same, isn't it? It's about having time away from the business, switching off when you go home as much as you can. And actually, the biggest thing I've stopped doing is worrying about things that I can't control. So if it's raining and the harvest delayed, it's just, well, it is what it is, isn't it? And there's no point winding yourself up about things like that. So actually, just not worrying about things outside my control, it really helps.
Yeah, don't worry about the things that you don't need to worry about. Chris, how do you look after yourself?
I I think probably don't do quite enough of that, but I think we should all try and do a little bit more. I think probably my biggest realization is realizing that actually none of us, or trying to run a business where none of us are totally indispensable. And that means that actually, we are able to go away for a weekend or for a week's holiday, and the world carries on turning, the cows carry on getting milked, and we realise that we rely a bit more on the fantastic team we've got on farm. So I think, coming back to what everyone said about people, allowing the fantastic team we've got to get on and do their job, which just gives you a little bit more peace of mind to go away and let them get on with it.
Yeah, well done. The two best epitaphs on gravestones I know, or the worst one is for a chap who died when he retired 6 months after he died. 6 months after he retired, I wish I'd worked longer in the office. Or the other better one is Spike Milligan. I told you I was ill. So yeah, let's all chill out and do as James requested. I suggested go down the pub together. Let's do that after this. Chris, back to you with the questions.
Thank you very much. I probably noticed that we're all of a sudden getting somewhat close to the end, so I should probably amalgamate a couple of questions.
Run over.
But yeah, I think probably a question for all of you. First of all, what is your outlook for UK agriculture in the coming months and years? And also, wrapped up with that, what one piece of advice and guidance would you give to the listeners, on how to look after your business and what the future looks like?
Who should we give that to?
Should we start with you, Justin?
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, so look, I remain fundamentally really positive about the sector. Yes, we've got challenges, and we've had challenges for a good number of years. Yes, the subsidy regimes are changing, and that's a massive change for an industry that's been supported in a similar kind of way for 70 to 80 years now. But we're an island nation in a temperate climate. We can produce the vast majority of the food that we need, and we're really good at it. We need to adapt. There's no question we need to adapt, and I just feel that we're in a stronger place to be successful within the agricultural business, provided that we continue to move forward and probably not look back. So yeah, really positive. In terms of advice, I've covered it off already, but document the plan, and then define what success looks like, and celebrate when you achieve things.
Brilliant.
Thank you very much. And Sarah.
Oh, much like Justin, I'm an optimist at heart. So no, I think it's there's a lot of positives coming down the road. People may see things like carbon footprinting as extra admin at the moment, but it's the sort of hint that there is something else coming down the road for agriculture, and there's a lot of practices that we do which are actually pretty good on the whole. In terms of advice, understand where you would like to be, either as yourself or as your business, and understand where you need extra support. Now, that doesn't have to be physically doing stuff on the farm. It could be saying, well, actually, I'm going to need to get somebody to help me with this additional paperwork, or I'm going to get somebody to help me with my next bank manager meeting, because they might not be as nice as Justin is today. Now, there's a lot of additional help out there at the moment. The DEFRA has got the Future Farm Resilience Fund, so there is free farm advice out there if you want it. There's loads of different suppliers all across England to help support, and that's aimed around BPS loss. So my piece of advice is understand where you're perhaps lacking, and go and find support to fill those gaps.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And Ben, what's your outlook, and what advice have you got for us all, please?
Well, I think my outlook for land ownership and management is actually very bullish. I think for raw commodity production, particularly arable production, I'm really pessimistic in the short to medium term. I can't see. I think it's bound up with climate change, and it's bound up with just global competition, and it doesn't really seem to matter how bad it gets in the world. The price never really seems to get up to anything beyond a sort of very small profit. We had a good year last year. Everybody had a good year last year, but actually, in my view, that just returned what should be considered a normal profit, and we're all celebrating because it's the best year we've had for years and years and years. So I'm afraid I'm fairly pessimistic about arable production, but much more bullish about some of the other income streams that are coming down the track, which are things like carbon and biodiversity and environment, particularly on the South Downs. And in terms of advice, I don't know really. I mean, it feels like everybody's running to stand still, and I think if you stop running, you fall behind. So you've got to just always be prepared to change, always know where you want to go. It's this same theme, isn't it? Know where you want to go and how you're going to get there, and don't be afraid to change it if it proves wrong.
Wonderful, thank you. I think last but not least, Jim.
No, I'm an optimist. I'm very positive about the outlook for dairy production, especially. I think you've got strengthening global financial situation, which is good for dairy products. Arable farming is obviously going to be tricky. It's going to be a bumpy ride, but I think the trend is upwards. Christmas comes every year, and people will always want Christmas trees. Hopefully, as long as we can grow them, at a sensible cost, we'll be fine. And I think my take-home message is to know your numbers, know your cost of production, and to just step back and enjoy what you do. We are extremely lucky to be custodians of land and to be in jobs that a lot of people would give their right arm for. And we should never lose sight of that, because it's an amazing career, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And Chris, same question to you.
Gosh, I think I agree with Jim. I think my outlook from a dairy perspective is very positive. I'm not really in a position to comment on arable or indeed Christmas trees or anything like that. But yeah, certainly as a dairy farmer, we're going through a tranche of investment at the moment, and we wouldn't be doing that if we didn't see a sustained and hopefully profitable future. In terms of a bit of advice for everybody, that's a tough one to answer, isn't it? I think get away from the farm, take some time to visit other people, talk to other business owners, learn what everyone else is doing, because I think all of the issues that we encounter, somebody else has already dealt with that, and they probably have got an answer for you.
Well done. Well done. Chris, you done so well running this today. I don't know why you needed me. I think we need to have a show of hands to see who thinks that Chris should be on the One Show or Country File. Show your hand if you think that's Chris. There we go.
I don't.
Right? You got your new career. I was also going to nominate you for Celebrity Come Dancing, but that's a conversation for another time. Everyone, we've run out of time. Chris, do you want to say anything else before we jointly wrap up?
No, other than just say, I think, thank you ever so much, everybody, for all of your time, and I hope that everyone else has found it as interesting as I have sitting here for the last hour or so. It's been really good fun.
Yeah, but and Chris, you are far better than me on notes. What are the main takeaways that you've learned from our experts today?
I think I would say that keeping certainly your cost of production, the financial side of things has come off an awful lot, hasn't it? And just knowing what's going on within your business and having a true understanding of the day-to-day running costs, the yearly outlook. I think what Jim mentioned about the 5-year plan as well, that's I think very, very interesting and very relevant, and that really helps us all to, I think, keep track of our direction of travel and what our main focus is, and just allows us not to deviate too far from that path. And I think also really interesting discussion about labour and the team that we have on farm. It's so important, and it seems to have been an on-running theme that having really good people surrounding us is certainly a key factor in hopefully success. So I think keeping hold of those good people one way or another and just not letting them go past the door is so important.
Yeah. Chris, well done. And someone's just WhatsApped me to say that they'd love to see you hosting BBC Radio 4's Farming Today programme, because you're already going to be up, because you're already going to be milking. Everyone, just want to say thank you very much to the South of England Agricultural Society for allowing this broadcast to happen on business resilience. And it goes without saying, we've got to thank Chris Appleton, Sarah Barnes from Creedy Associates, Justin from Virgin Money, Ben from the Iford Farms, and James Wallis from the from Sutton Hall Estates. Just want to thank again Fram Farmers for being involved with this and sponsoring today. Fram Farmers, www.framfarmers.co.uk. And Chris, you got this big event coming up, haven't you? The Farming Conference, Wednesday, 1st of November, 6 till 10 p.m. at the South of England Showground. And it's on this great theme of can we really save the planet from a farming perspective. And you've got Charlotte Smith, chair from BBC Radio 4's Farming Today programme, Sue Pritchard, CEO of Food Farming and Countryside Commission, and Phil Jarvis, the chair of the Alban Wise Farming and Environmental Group. I'm guessing all of you are going to be going. Sarah, are you going to go?
Sounds like we better do, didn't it?
Yeah. James, you're going?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Ben, you're there?
Yeah, hopefully.
And Justin, everyone, I want to talk to you because of all the fantastic advice that you've given. Everyone, I'm just going to ask you all to turn off your video so I can put up this last slide about the conference. Thank you very much today. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure that you have, but we haven't got all the solutions here for you. But I think the main thing that came over for me today was communication. That if you can communicate with your peer group, or with the likes of, as Justin was intimating, with the likes of your banker or your advisors, you're going to be in a far better spot than potentially you are today, and that's going to be of long-term benefit for you. So there's our farming conference details. Wednesday, the 1st of November, 6 till 10 p.m. I think that's a great time to have it on the basis of can we really save the planet from a farming perspective? Charlotte Smith, Sue Pritchard, and Phil Jarvis. We will all see you at the conference on Wednesday, the 1st of November. Everyone, thank you very much.